every 10 minutes is 33, 33, 33, 33. Okay? Now, this is based on notional data that Azimuth and the GIS Tech Center were able to come up with, because the actual data was not available to us for this simulation, but that should be available later this summer. Right? So we took that number and we broke it down so we know how much water is being produced every 10 minutes based on the notional input that we had. So based on the county usage of the water, you know, the baseline 50%, and then we look down through, we see 49%. So really the evacuees in this case on our scenario don't have a big impact on water consumption. But under different circumstances, you know, if they use more water than what we plugged them in for, it would. So let's look at Jefferson County, Hampshire County, etc. So, you know, it's all driven by the numbers that we put in for the scenario parameters. All right, so now we have we've made some changes to this sim, so we need to recompute this simulation. Let's go ahead and recompute this. So since we made those changes, we can save and recompute. So as we do that, now it's going to take about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes from what we saw last time to do this. So now let's show you a barrier example that we previously did a barrier. The barriers take a little longer. We'd be happy to show anybody the barriers, but in the interest of time, we did a little Paula Deen action here and just pre-baked a couple for you. If you want. That one? There's no barriers. All right, so we see our barrier in Hampshire County, and let's look to see when that barrier is going to activate. So that barrier is going to activate 30 minutes into this simulation. And let's get some general information about this simulation. So we can see that 200,000 people, they have 5 miles per gallon in their vehicles. There's a barrier on Route 50 West and Route 28. And let's see, so this has congestion modeling enabled, which enforces that there is only limited space available on the road networks. So just as you're traveling down the interstate, you don't have cars literally piled on top of you. This actually enforces the fact that there's a 20, each vehicle takes 20 feet, so the road itself can only have a total occupancy of the road length with the variable of 20 feet and how many lanes are on that particular road. So let's start going through the sim. Now we can see what's going to happen. And remember, we're crunching the other simulation, so we will come back to that simulation in a moment after we look at this. So we have some shelters over in Hampshire County, and if we look at how the road, as the traffic progresses over time, we see that they're going to hit different gas stations. We see that this shelter just changed colors. Let's go back. Go back one. So this shelter here, we'll highlight. That shelter, watch that. 20 minutes into it, it's green. 30 minutes into it, it's changed color. So what's that color mean? So let's pull up our legends. So that means that that shelter now is somewhere 85% capacity remaining or less. So let's keep moving on with our time slider. 40 minutes into it, that shelter is basically depleted resources. That means that shelter is full. What had happened, though, remember that our barrier is activated 30 minutes into it. So let's go back to 30 minutes. And notice here at the barrier, That barrier, right now, that barrier is being activated. So you can imagine your emergency personnel out there starting constructing that barrier, etc. Getting there. However you envision based on your war chest for that barrier to start. So 30 minutes into it, it's set up. 40 minutes into it, now we start seeing that there's a difference. We have blocked off traffic. So now we see that traffic is continuing up past that shelter that we had been looking at, but now there's no more traffic going up that way. So now the traffic's routing this way, and let's see how that goes. And we wanted to redirect, in this simulation, we redirected the people going from, by putting in that barrier, we redirect them over to shelters that they may not have gone to otherwise. So one shelter was full, we then reroute them to other shelters that have capacity. Same thing for hospitals. So now, with that simulation open, we will open up a version of this particular one that does not have a barrier.
Can you replace this one?
No, we have one that doesn't have a barrier. It's 70. Let's find the one that, yeah. So we'll launch this one. This one does not have a barrier. So let's verify that we don't have a barrier. Okay. Now, let's start seeing how this plays out. Let's zoom in on that same area of interest. Here's the same shelter. Let this play out. Don't we keep going on? So now, let's say about 2 hours. Let's compare this with the other shelter, or with the other step. So now one way we can do this is we can add back and forth. So get a good mental snapshot of this, and then we'll switch over and look at the other one. So this is the one with the barrier. So now let's look at the one without the barrier. So we see the difference, that the traffic did actually get rerouted. Kind of like flip book style, you have to keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So we've developed a tool that allows you to just see the numeric differences between these two simulations. So now let's jump to something we call comparative analytics. So here we just selected the two scenarios that one has the barrier and one does not have the barrier. So we've selected those two. So now let's scroll down and let's compare these two. So now we can start seeing some sensitivity or relationships between the two. So we can view the information for minor medical, major medical, shelters, fuel stations, water, vehicles, and overall simulation, elapsed time. So we can compare these two simulations. Over the top we see the simulation ID 15,087, and we see what that means. So that one has the barrier, and we see that 15,086 does not have the barrier. So by not having the barrier, 15,086, we are able to, or excuse me, 15,086 does not have the barrier. So 2,432 people were able to get treatment, and then 15,087 here, 87 that has the barrier, 2,384 people were able to get treatment. Well, let's go down and look at the shelter information. So now, here we can see a difference between rerouting those people with the barrier versus not rerouting them with the barrier. So the reroute actually allowed us to treat, or actually shelter about 500 more people, I believe. So so about 500 more people were able to be rerouted to shelter because of the barrier logic rerouting the traffic. So we have, you can go down through, you can look at fuel station information. Let's just look through these. You can compare. You can actually do more than 2 simulations. You can compare multiple simulations together. You're not limited to just 2 sims. So then you can go down to water. Let's look at water consumption. All right. So remember, at our water consumption, we consumed water at urgent care facilities. We consumed water at hospitals. We consumed water at fuel stations. We consumed water at shelters. Okay, so now here's the total water consumption between those 2 simulated environments. And remember, the only difference is we rerouted traffic to a different set of shelters and hospitals. Let's see if anybody got stranded. Oh, we did have some stranded people, stranded travelers. So the stranded travelers ran out of gas. So we had stranded vehicles and stranded travelers. So that means we didn't have enough fuel in our simulated area to accommodate the demand. And then both simulations should have taken about the same amount of time. So 551 minutes, 558 minutes. So, and we have another simulation that just crunched, and that was the one that we looked at earlier. This one?
This is Jennifer Nugent, and after we see this simulation, do we want? Are there any other critical points you want to show, and then open up for questions, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So let's show this, and then we want to show you one other thing, and then we'll open it up for questions. So this example, this was the one that we just crunched, where we activated shelters, I believe. Our shelters get activated. This one did not have the activated shelters. I think you picked the wrong one.
Yeah, that's right.
I think you picked the wrong one because it didn't activate any shelters. We've got so many tabs open for the presentation, we got a little bit confused there. It wasn't that one. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We have one more thing we want to show you, and that is extensibility. So we've been working to demonstrate that this is extensible to areas outside of this 4-county region. So we put together 9 counties. With the help of Azimuth, we pulled the data together. And for the Charleston, West Virginia area, we've developed a similar tool for that particular region. So we're going to pull this up.